It's not just strategy. An edge in day trading thrives or dies by the trader behind it. Welcome to Trading Ascension, where the information guides you along the personal and spiritual growth journey toward profitable day trading. I'm Jason E., and in each episode, you'll discover practical self-development tools and transformative mindset practices to break through emotional blocks, mental noise, and self-sabotaging habits, so your mindset can finally support your edge. This show is for growth-minded day traders who want result-focused trading psychology and personal growth tools to sharpen their edge and decrease their emotional swings. In today's episode, I want to have an important conversation around pressure, how it impacts our mind, our body, our psyche, and our trading. If you day trade, you are likely to face it at some point, if not numerous points on your journey. So how do you deal with it in a way that gets us forward in our skill set, improves our mentality, so we can reach our day trading goals? Because pressure is not just a feeling, it's a state of being. And when that state takes over, the first thing it steals is your perspective. What was once just the next trade suddenly feels like this big defining moment. The nervous system tightens, the mind starts reaching for certainty, and before you know it, what should be a choice turns into a reaction. And that's where our trading starts to break down. Fear, greed, frustration, and urgency begin to pull us away from our plan and back toward what feels, or whatever feels, just emotionally safe in that moment. But if we can understand what pressure is doing inside of us, we can stop treating it like a mystery and start using it as information for our improvement. So today we'll walk around through the experience of pressure, what it does to our nervous system, how it distorts our thinking, and then how we can use it to become a better trader and a stronger person. Let's talk perspective shifts. Pressure is what causes the nervous system to read a moment as threatening, triggering this fight or flight moment to kick in, and the narrowing of our ability to think clearly and stay with the plan. Like I said, the first thing pressure steals is perspective. It makes simple next steps feel like the defining moments, right? This is huge. And that distortion, it pulls us out of the present moment into overimportance. We may still feel aware, but we're no longer grounded in what matters right then. So ponder this shift. Once you get this, I think it will be helpful. So one thing I've learned over the years is that the things I have in my life always eventually develop a kind of normacy, right? Now, that doesn't mean I lack gratitude. It just means that having is different from wanting, right? The feeling. Being is different from seeking. So this week's perspective shift, it's this. You probably work in the same way. You want something, you move toward it, you get it, and eventually your attention moves on. But before we get to the next thing, the current thing becomes ordinary. Again, not in like a disrespectful way to it, but it just becomes, this is what it is. You know, the old car breaks down, maybe you need a new one. You remember, if you're in a relationship, how it was at the start. It becomes established, right? No longer like the first date feeling. Maybe not. And this pattern is normal. It's normal to have this normalcy to what you're having in your life and what's been there. You adjust to it. And the interesting part is most of this happens in the mind. And that's what I'm bringing to your attention. Because you can control anything in your mind. So you can begin to shift your trading into a place of this normalcy, which helps relieve some of the self-imposed pressure. What that does is it takes your trading off a pedestal and it creates more balance around it. Think about the difference between like visiting your friend or your cousin versus meeting like your favorite movie star or favorite athlete, if you have one. One has ease, familiarity to it, and balance. The other has weight, pressure, too much importance. We as traders can overvalue trading, which likely isn't how you would feel about your trading once you reach that next level that you're striving for, your next level of success. We know that importance is a huge pressure starter, and it can also become a repellent of your goals. And again, referring back to reality transurfing, right? And the lessons we learn from that content. When we overvalue something, life tends to start feeling heavy around it in people, in relationships and situations. You ever heard that? That's something. Let me just stop there on relationships. Like, you ever heard that treat someone like a star and they'll treat you like a fan? That kind of spreads to any aspect of your life. I want you to think about trading in a more balanced way. Now, again, you're not trying to become careless. This is a nuance, right? We're just moving the needle a little bit. We're not swinging the pendulum from one side to the other. Don't get crazy with it. You're just trying to become steady. The version of you who already has your trading goals does not approach the market like it's a life or death meeting every day. That version trades daily, accepts the path, executes, and then moves on with the rest of their life. It doesn't live in this constant trading related uncertainty. That version of you stays disciplined and it stays balanced. So be cool. Don't open the charts like you're meeting your idol. Open them more like you're meeting someone you already know. Familiar, respectful, calm, no pedestal. And you build that path by consistently daily, right? You should know your market, right? And a lot of traders, a lot of people promote just being intimate with just a few markets, right? Starting with one, moving on if you're trading more, but building that relationship. And you can do this mentally, or you can build more balance in your actual life so your nervous system has space to reset. So that means getting rest. That's one thing that you need away from the charts. Get the space you need to reset, right? Don't make it a 24/7 thing, right? If you're going hard at it, which I understand at the beginning, I was too, maybe it's a 23/7 thing. Because you cannot see clearly with your nose pressed up against something. You need space. What also helps is staying consistent in action. When you have a written trading plan, which includes a strategy that's written, and you adhere to that daily, you start to get that familiarity, which reduces the mental overimportance, right? Brings it into that, oh yeah, this is just what I do. Now let's talk about pressure. Pressure is what happens when the nervous system interprets a trading moment as high stakes. And sometimes the moment is high stakes, right? But we can't handle it internally just yet. That's what causes that pressure to make us boil over. The pressure shows up and it transforms that moment, and a trade stops feeling like just a trade and starts feeling like it means something about us as a person, like it means something about our financial future or our skill or just our future life in general, which the impact is probably overinflated at that moment. And this pressure, it hits when maybe your size goes up and your risk feels real. Maybe a win streak breaks or your P&L swings hard. Maybe you have a long losing spell, lose a few trades in a row. And our story starts running in the background of our psyche. And this story, it could be a trading related story or not, right? It could be a life story, a self-perception story that we're telling ourselves, even childhood stories that sneak back in about who we are and what we need to do to feel safe. And it's interesting because you may think, oh, I'm this and that, whatever you think about yourself. But those safety mechanisms don't care. The toughest, hardest guys you see, if you know what you're looking for, you see childhood wounds in them. Adult men, adult women. And those stories fuel pressure, and pressure feeds off of them. The nervous system is wired to detect threat and uncertainty, and trading is full of both. So when a moment feels bigger than our capacity to stay grounded, our body starts to tighten, the mind narrows, and then what's just a simple next step becomes this defining moment. And the real issue isn't the pressure, right? And that pressure exists because that's a part of life. And it's not even the story we're telling ourselves. It's that combination and how we respond to it, which reveals where we're still underdeveloped inside, right? Because we have to change to get new results in our life. So when I say underdeveloped, it's not disrespect to ourselves, right? It's just an area of growth to be a new version of ourselves. So when pressure hits, choice is lost. And the danger is we often don't notice the exact moment it happens. It kind of creeps up. And then what starts as awareness turns into reaction. And then reaction gets disguised as decisiveness. You ever had that emotional spell and you're clicking quickly, right? You're making these decisions fast. You ever get stopped out and think, oh, I was just wicked out, I'll get back in immediately. Or get stopped out and like, oh, I was wrong, let me jump in the other direction. And then you're just stacking multiple losses in a row, spiraling further down. But at that moment, right, you were taking decisive action. There was no doubt. It was the move to make. It was the right action. And you took it. And you took it automatically. And I used to think when I was taking these actions, like, man, that was super easy to lose. Lose a few in a row, blow that account. If I could only reprogram myself to where it was super easy to do the opposite actions. And early in my career, I built this logging and screenshot process. And here's the tip. And we talked about it before, so hopefully you have this in your system. But in my system, immediately after every trade, and sometimes in volatile markets, my setup appears right after my last runner finishes. And I may get back in a trade, but I have a 3-trade hard stop where I must log the trade, breathe, no matter what's happening on the charts. I got to create some space. I can't get caught up in that tornado. And that creates the space, or like Jared Tindler says, it injects logic into the situation. And then just small habits like that. Just, hey, I take a trade, I stop, I log it, right? Just small habits like that built into your system. It empowers your success naturally because it's part of your system. You're building in success in your system, and that supports your growth. It helps avoid pressure-driven reactions because although the mind says it needs certainty, right? It's trickiness. What it really wants is relief from that internal pressure. So what's happening internally? For that pressure, that catalyst, whatever pushed us over the edge, it's like a combo plate, right? It's the situation at hand merging with our perspective. And then the result feels unfamiliar and threatening. We judge it internally as a threat, and we're off into automated zone, fight or flight. And we talked about this before as far as the internal systems at play. But that threat starts the process of down-regulating our state of being. So immediately we go into survival mode. Trading goals, plan, that shit's out the window. Now we're headed straight towards the nearest perceived place of safety. And I remember when I read in one of Mark Douglas's and Paula T. Webb's books that blowing the account could be the closest door to safety. Losing a trade could be the closest door to safety. And so these things aren't necessarily, they're almost the opposite of what our conscious trading goals are. But in that moment that pressure hits, it's the relief that our psyche and our mindset is and our nervous system is seeking. And that's the spiral starting. One reaction becomes threat, threat becomes more reactions, survival mode just digs in deeper, self respect erodes, urgency builds, and suddenly we're fighting the market instead of just trading and flowing with it. Now, I've learned over my time doing this show that not every trader struggles with pressure the same way. But if this message is resonating with you, I want to leave you with 3 levels of support: how to reduce pressure before it builds, how to respond when it shows up, and how to recover when it gets the best of you. So, first, let's talk reducing pressure before it boils over. And the foundation of this is just starting with a written plan. When the plan is clear, the moment has less room to become bigger than it is. You don't have to make decisions under emotional distress that the financial markets naturally cause. So that plan, when it's in place, we leave less room to run out of mental capacity and fall into making emotional decisions while we're in the market, right? You don't go to war and game plan on the battlefield. You have a default plan. Having a plan, it elevates, or no, it doesn't elevate. It alleviates. That's the word I'm looking for. Pressure. You can lean on strategy and rules that you created with a sound mind versus responding in that moment. Now, as a new trader, you face new moments, right? When you're thinking like, well, I've never faced this situation before. I have no clue what to do. And that's okay. And that's why, when we break down the success generator system, right? And if you're using it, there's a section called market context, right? It's part of the written plan. And this is where we log new experiences and we game plan so we're prepared the next time. You're going to have new experiences and they're finite, right? They may look different, but after a certain time, your experience, you're going to run into everything that you can run into, especially if you're trading down a narrow plan. It's like if you were running a certain offense in, let's just say hoop, right? You're running a certain basketball offense. After a while of running it, you're going to see every single defense that can be thrown against it. Now, if you're running multiple offenses, of course, you're going to see all kinds of defenses, but that's what the written plan does. It makes things finite, puts you on the straight and narrow path towards your success. And I remember when I was scalping the ES, right, early in my trading journey, and I was entering with market orders. And for quite some time, I wasn't getting my first target filled. And I would panic, right? I didn't know what to do. It sometimes would touch the price. And sometimes they'd touch it a few times, but not fill my target, right? Unless it just went through that price. And sometimes it would go through, come back. I'm like, dang, what's happening here? And I noticed this and I started putting it in my market context, right? And I watched it to determine the best plan. This happened. I didn't know what to do. I'm going to plan for it next time. So once I looked at the data, I decided if my target was touched and not filled, I needed to move my stop loss to half the risk. Because the data said that a loss happened a lot of times in that situation, right? And I'll tell you what, it was a terrible feeling to reach target, not get the results I desired, and then take a full loss, right? So I adjusted my plan. Now, the first few times it happened, the pressure hit and I was like, what the hell? I would panic and just do random things, right? Close out the trade, maybe, try to take a partial win. Sometimes I would even make my risk larger, thinking that, okay, it hit once, it's going to hit again, it will be back. I can give it more room to complete this scalp. I would also fall victim to the stories when this was happening, right? This prop firm is rigged, or my broker is cheating me. But having and increasing the use case of my my written plan, it helped. So let's talk about the last part of the flare up I experienced, right? The story I was telling myself. You have to ensure that you go into trading with a hero of your story attitude and not a hero of the world attitude. It's a big difference, right? You also have to drop all the victim talk. It's easy, especially now, this is the age of victim praise, even if you're not truly one. But it's more likely a situation where no person really just gives two cares about you, right? Versus everyone's trying to sabotage you, right? The truth somewhere in the middle. Also, when you think your trading is the savior of something, it just adds pressure. Now, of course, some of you, probably a lot of you, have plans to help a lot of other people, which is great. But holding that story while you're entering a trade also carries the weight of I'm failing for a lot of those people. And when things don't go well, it can drag you down, right? You could think this trade is going to be huge and life changing. It's just adding pressure. It's just a trade. Counting money and putting it in your personal account is a story that adds pressure, right? Before it's there. Changing a trading loss into a worldly loss. Instead of I lost that trade, it's, oh, I lost my new car payment, or I lost my rent, or my future is lost, right? And of course, traders control your risks. It shouldn't really be one of those things. I'm talking about the stories. You could be like, my rent really on the line. Don't do that, right? Trade what you can lose. But the best part of the written plan is it allows you to control your risk and take it one trade at a time. So we have to drop these stories that you find yourself telling yourself. And there's another place that we can address stories even more powerful way, right? And I'll circle back to that. But let's move to the next area. Let me take a sip of coffee here. It's going for a while. And I made a great cup this morning. Don't mind if I get back into that. So, responding to pressure when it arises. We just talked about pressure before and kind of alleviating it. So, when pressure shows up, we need to stop the momentum in the wrong direction. And a great way to do this is create space between you and the event. When pressure hits you and you feel it building, right? It's usually that emotional, maybe a tightening. It's going to happen in your body. And I encourage you to know what it feels like in yourself so you can become aware of it when it's creeping up on you. That lack of self-awareness allows it not only to show up at the front door, but to open the door, walk in, sit on the couch, take muddy shoes and smear the carpet. But self-awareness, right, and how it feels when it's showing up in your body and you're not ignoring it, allows you to catch it sooner. But when it is there, right, that's more part one stuff. But when it is there, the worst thing that we can do is increase the stimulus, right? And this is interesting because as I was thinking about this, and it works for me, I don't know if this works for everybody, but this is just the tip I'm providing, because I know some people, when life's stressful, they put more on their plate, right? They're like, oh, so much is going on. This relationship's bad. I need more relationships. Or this is that. I need to go party. Like they just have this need to make things more complex. Me, naturally, I simplify things. Like, oh, whoa, something's going on here. We need to start eliminating things. We need to start locking in. But I know just in trading in general, I think this will be helpful for everyone, right? We got to create space from the stimulus. And think about a pot when it boils over, right? And it has water in it. When you move it off the stove, it simmers down. When you get up and walk away from the charts, when pressure is starting to overcome you, you simmer down. Another way to create space is you can label what is happening. And this helps you separate from what feels like you as a person from what you're actually experiencing as a person, right? So the difference is believing I am, what's a good one? Disappointed, right? I am disappointed versus, oh, that was disappointing, right? That experience was disappointing. And this can sometimes reduce the intensity, right? Because the I am is powerful. And it usually manifests in what we believe the I am is. So I am disappointed takes you and puts you in that state. But that was disappointing. You can stay grounded in your state and still have that experience, be real with it, not ignore it, get the lesson from it. So that can sometimes reduce the intensity, slowing down, decreasing the input, and giving the nervous system just room to settle. Clear thinking requires distance, and the labeling is what happens when you create the distance. Now, you can guide your actions with the question, right? And this is during the flare up, you might want to say, what response here aligns with self respect and aligns with the trader I want to be, not what just feels gratifying right now. Because you're going to be pulled towards that gratification, that safety. Sometimes that circles back, to the first step where we talked about just getting space. And we talk about this a lot, but the equivalent to simmering down internally, because there's these talking about these external actions, but deep breathing exercises are what helps you actually simmer down inside. When pressure hits and we're in that fight or flight mode, our breathing is very shallow. I can promise you, you're breathing shallow when you're having these flare-ups. And shallow breathing and shallow thinking, they are great friends. They're homies. You'll always find one near the other. When pressure builds, you can breathe into it, breathe it away. And this is a great solution because not only does it lower pressure, it accumulates or acclimates your body so that your capacity to hold more and more emotional pressure increases, right? So we talked about the power of breathing. It's powerful. Now, sometimes we're so caught up in the storm, we can't apply some of these tools. It just happens. We get in the tornado and then we get thrown in the field and we're like, oh, that was the tornado, right? I'm laying here in the field. I'm just thinking about like a real tornado. I saw a tornado movie recently. It's just picking up houses, throwing stuff all around. But anyway, the ability to be forgiving to yourself, right? Don't judge yourself for having these emotional flare-ups. They're going to happen, right? You may not always have the space at the moment to inject these tools. You may not be able to breathe, right? You may just get swept away and not be able to do anything until it's over. So let's talk about the third part, which is recovering quickly from pressure when it hits and it hijacks the moment. Because pressure is going to arise, right? I think Usher taught us what to do. He said, situations will arise in our lives, but you got to be smart about it. No, I'm kidding. Recovering quickly from pressure, right? In these hijacking moments. Pressure may not disappear overnight, even after this show and implementing this plan. And with awareness, even with good habits, there may still be moments where we get pulled off center. So the real goal is our recovery speed. We talked about, removing the story going into trading, but this is the second part I was alluding to earlier. Man, oh man, the hidden agenda story that appears when and after pressure hits, oh, it's so powerful. This is where that story that is the foundation of the safety that we're seeking, it starts to appear. And it appears as this negative mental chatter. And if you can be aware of what your mind is saying at that moment, you can transform yourself. Because that self-talk happens, right? You've made the mistake. It was the mistake that was driven by pressure. And then all of a sudden you're hearing in your mind, oh, you suck. You'll never get this. You're a loser, right? You aren't smart enough. You aren't this. You aren't that. You are this. You are that, right? Whatever that story is, this is an opportunity to observe and work on the narrative, right? So we're changing the story going into trading, like the pressure story. Oh, I'm trading to save the world. And then the real story that's running in your nervous system after this flare up, it's powerful to pay attention to. So after the flare up, maybe it was caused by, like you overtraded. Maybe it was caused by greed. And then after that happens, you're ruminating over what happened. And I want you to listen to what the story is. Change the narrative. You'll never, read the chart right, it might say. You'll never read charts right. But that's not true. You can rephrase that. No, 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 that's not true. I'm getting better every week. I'll get this. Right. And you start to battle that story, or you ignore the story. You ignore it. You don't give it any validity. You'll never read the charts. Oh, you just keep going on, right? You let it pass like a cloud. And this is high level stuff, right? It's hard to, especially for intelligent people, it's hard to not believe the ego and what's going on in the mind, because you're like, oh, I'm a smart person, right? If my mind's saying something, it must be true. But the truth is, our minds are memories. They're computer programs, garbage in, garbage out, and they're running on this autopilot, and they're running on a cycle, right? It's not directed towards the future, right? It's directed towards regurgitating. So the pressure uncovers this hidden story. If you deal with it the right way, you have an opportunity to transform. So last thing, post pressure, flare up help is that you have to collect data. And I know the shame of just mucking it up once again, it can cause you to just run from the truth. Right. And I've seen things like where I've been in groups and traders were sim trading, like I'm sim trading, in this mastermind session. And instead of just taking a loss log in it, they're like, oh man, let me just sim trade 100 contracts to get out of this red. We want to forget. We want to forget what happened as soon as possible. Right. And we'll forget, like, oh, I'm just going to promise myself it won't happen again, but I'm not going to face that data. Right. I'm not going to look at that mistake. I'll just fix the mistake. Right. I don't have to face it head on. And if you don't face it head on, it will happen again because you gave it a pass. Right. You let it come in the house and sit on the couch. And shame is one of the greatest change agents. So instead of, give me 1 second, let me turn off this reminder telling me to drink some water. Start the day hydrated. But the shame of mucking up, I think I was talking about. It can cause us to run from the truth and not want to collect the data. And I guess this is the direction I was going, is that shame is a change agent. So instead of the shame and disappointment causing you to hide from data, I want you to label the action with shame and create the space to change. And this is how that looks. So you let pressure build up, right? You royally messed up. You're going to recover from it. But you write the trade in your journal. You snap the trade picture. You log the trade. You listen to that post-pressure story that's going on in your mind. Because pressure will test us, but it can also train us. And over time, the goal is not to become someone who never feels pressure. The goal is to become someone who returns themselves to a natural state faster after it hits. When you have the catalyst, right, what caused you to go over the edge, and you have the story of why you did, right, because it's exposed after the pressure hits. When you have these aspects and you're conscious of them, change is going to be easier. It's going to be easier to change your actions on the charts. And I chase that, trade is hard to fix. But as I was chasing and telling myself that story, I started to notice it more. And when my mind just said things, it became more like just distant from me. And so when I'm collecting data, the things that jumped out, I could see it the next time. And so I started adding these data points, and I added it to my market context and my written plan. And the directions like, okay, so let me give you an example. So let's say the market just volatility jumped, right? and I thought it was going to run. And my mind was saying, I missed out, right? So we have two things going on there. Volatility, right? Market volume, whatever, just jumped. Whatever the catalyst is on the chart, that happened. And then my mind saying, oh, I'm going to miss out, right? FOMO. So now I know what I'm thinking. I know what caused me to flare up and meet with that point. And those data points can add to my market context written plan. So you add to your plan a new direction. So now I'm thinking and I'm writing, right? And I'm more conscious of, okay, if volatility spikes, don't chase, right? Don't chase these trades at the open, at the news, etc. Right? Whatever the solution is, and I'm doing this from a more pressure's gone, so I'm doing it for a mind that's more grounded. And you always have more opportunities, right? So the more legs you have, right, the catalyst, the story, the feeling, the more legs you have and that you can see with these trading issues, the less likely, and I'm talking about taking out these legs, the less likely it can stand up to you in the future. Hope that makes sense. So, in closing, pressure is what pushes us into actions that don't serve our best interest. So there's three ways we can address it, right? Reducing pressure. We talked about written plan, so you don't have to rely on, leaning into mental capital and making spur of the moment decisions. Changing the story, going into the market, right? Decreasing the pressure that you're putting on yourself from the stories you're telling, which makes a single trade into a defining moment for life. And of course, part of that is risk management, right? So it's really not putting your livelihood on the line in one single trade. And then there's responding to pressure, right? Because it's starting to creep up. And what's helpful there is getting space from the situation, walking away, creating a space to breathe. And then we can ask ourselves a question to guide our trajectory, right? And just right now, instead of what feels gratifying, what response aligns with who I want to be, right? With the best version of myself as a trader. And that question, it keeps us focused on self-respect instead of emotional relief. And the goal, again, is not to avoid discomfort at all costs. The goal is to preserve self-respect under pressure and act in our own best interest. But pressure is going to come. So what do we do afterwards? Well, we have to kill that internal story, right? The data point, that leg that just forced us to react to the situation the way we did. When pressure rises, that story gets louder. And that's one of the only moments that we can actually find the story. It's hiding, right? It's part of us. It's so deep in our psyche, right? In personal development, we call this shadow work because there are things that hide within that are deep, dark in our programming, in our cellular memory. And it takes these flare-ups to bring them up, right? So let me just, real quick, the importance of setbacks, failures, it can't be overstated because without those, that story never exposes itself. Someone with anger issues, they don't know why they're angry until they get angry, right? And then the story starts to present itself. Someone who has fear issues on the charts, off the charts, this is just life in general. In a natural mind, they don't know why they were afraid of that situation. They don't know why they were angry, but when it flares up, that story reveals itself, right? Because that down regulating kicks in that we talk about in the nervous system where we're going, all right, trading plans out the window, safety, all go on that plan. So value and embrace these situations knowing that it's there because it's going to help you get to your next level. And this only works if you have a goal. When you have goals in life, the obstacle is the way. The situation that is in your life for a person who has a goal is very necessary. It is custom to you. It is a blessing, although it doesn't feel like it, because it's going to take you to where you need to go. You should love that, man. So back to recovering quickly as we sum this up, right? We start narrating what the moment means, what it says about us, what it cost us. And we have to kill that story when it presents itself. It pops up like whack-a-mole. So we want to kill the story. We want to acknowledge the emotions. And what this does is it helps us keep authority over that moment. We can feel it deeply without getting sucked up by it. And then our next actions can keep us from getting pulled into self-judgment because we're like, oh, we made the same mistake over and over again. And if you can do just a few of these things today, if you can implement just a few of these tools, you'll get better results over time as a day trader. Can you kill the story of pressure going into trading? Can you kill the story of what flare-ups tell you? Can we acknowledge the emotion without losing authority? Can we get back to clarity, self-respect, and align action faster than we did it before? This is the work. This is the personal development work. This is the trading improvement work. And I know you can do it. Thank you for listening. Have a great trading week. And here's to being the hero of your story.